Crystallizing your vision will allow you to win in the game of basketball and at the game of life. And the mission of CourtVision achieves exactly that. It's an interactive platform which allows youth to break down their game film, to discover tendencies, strengths, and weaknesses. However, they also provide you the space to put together a winning game plan when it comes to the game of life through mentorship and resources. They give you the tools necessary to successfully tackle the issues and the aspects of your life which comes up once you leave the gym. Bret Macdonald is the founder of CourtVision, and he joined me this week to discuss the platform in greater detail and the impact it's making to positively influence basketball players everywhere. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Brett, I want to welcome you to the program this afternoon, and I'm excited to learn all about CourtVision. Thanks for taking a few minutes and for being here this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
Yeah, Kevin, you're welcome. And, thank you for, once again, for reaching out. It means a lot. You didn't have to do that. And I'm glad we've been able to figure it out because we've been trying to, do it for a couple of weeks here, and a couple of things have interrupted us more on my end of things than that. So thank you for kind of staying with it and getting me on here. I appreciate it.
And there's nothing like being flexible, isn't it?
Totally. You nailed it.
And talking about being flexible, just before we get into CourtVision, I don't know if you knew this, but March is International Women's Month. So I'm curious to know what the women in your life mean to you, buddy, and the impact they've had on your life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously having a supportive mom, nurturing figure in my life is huge, and then having, my lovely girlfriend who I live with, and that as a strong rock and always supporting me in my endeavors, and that is huge. And in CourtVision we have over 100 girls as well in the program, and that too. So really love the initiative, and everything going forward with women and supporting them in our world.
Absolutely. Now, let's dive into CourtVision. I know that you help people or athletes sort of break down their game from a film perspective in an interactive way in terms of strengths, weaknesses, and tendencies. So tell me a little bit about CourtVision and why it's so important to you.
Yeah, so the first off was the idea to be able to break down film for young athletes, and show them the whys and the hows of why we should be doing things, certain reads, and film in sports, especially in basketball, it really doesn't lie to you. It exposes everything. It shows you maybe everything that you've never believed in a coach telling you this and that, and really the focus was to teach athletes, especially during COVID, but just in general, the whys and the hows, and for them to visually see it. We can tell them all the time what to do on the court, but if they don't see it, at times to absorb it and then apply it is often tricky. So, the whole focus initially was to break down film in an interactive way for athletes. So they would actually come on a call with us. They would answer questions in like an interactive quiz. You'd have a countdown. It would be much like a basketball game where you have to make split second decisions on, oh, what's the right read to make? Okay, I got to click, D, hard hedge the ball screen, or I got to click A, go under the ball screen because the player is not a good shooter. So we're really trying to simulate basketball like reads as well, but through a fun and interactive kind of quizzing component.
And tell me, why are you personally motivated to be behind this? And talk about your passion for basketball.
Yeah, so the big pull for me, Kevin, is really the youth mentorship component of bringing in kids to the program. We don't just break down film. We offer life skills, life advice. We have our Friday calls, which are called our coaches huddle, which is a different topic every week for kids. And it's not just basketball related, it's life, it's goal setting, it's time management, it's financial literacy, which to me is really the big pull. And that's where the idea kind of came to fruition was, wow, we could do so much more than just break down film for young athletes. We can really be live mentors or bring mentors in specific fields where we don't have strengths and really bring that to light for kids. So that was the big pull for CourtVision, was not just basketball, but was bringing in these kids, breaking down film, showing them that's cool, but also then the mentorship component too.
Mentorship and ensuring the athletes they serve receive a wholehearted approach in their development process is also at the heartbeat of their mission at CourtVision. So I asked Macdonald to expand upon how the folks at CourtVision ensure that they focus on the entire evolution of the athletes they serve.
Is just being a good person. At the end of the day, regardless of your athletic talents or whatever, you are always a person before a sport. You never want to be identified as someone who is just really good at a sport, but is a poor person. You really want to be identified as a really good person who then happens to maybe be, a good athlete as well. And you really want to just hammer that home about being a good person, being a good man, being a good woman, being a good friend, a husband, father, brother, whatever, because that's going to take you further in the game of life than the game of basketball will. Yeah, well, I think it's, very important to be connecting with athletes, at all times, especially during COVID. I think there were a lot of athletes feeling isolated, here in BC, on, kind of Western Canada, British Columbia and Alberta have been very tight with restrictions. So not many kids have been able to be out there and play, sports right now. So having an outlet for them from a, social standpoint, from a getting better standpoint, watching film, and then also, having an outlet for them to come on and maybe talk with us about some of the things that they're going through as athletes was really, really key in the timing and development of creating CourtVision. The idea with it wasn't just to create it because of COVID. The idea happened to, kind of come to fruition at the start of COVID. And then it really was like a placeholder for a lot of young athletes going through, tricky and challenging times during COVID here.
When we talk about the evolution of basketball as a sport, certainly post play has become a little bit of the back burner, and a lot of offenses now are spatially oriented, where spacing is important for 3-point shooting and the like. So I'm wondering how the changes in basketball from a tactical standpoint changes or affects the way you operate at CourtVision.
Yeah, so you nailed it on the head how the game of basketball is changing. However, what we do at CourtVision, regardless of the way the game is going, we're always able to adapt because we're watching real time what's happening, right? So, with analytics and statistics coming out, the 3-point shot is something that is so prevalent in the game. It's worth more points. There's so many other, intricacies as to why teams shoot more threes these days and the stats and facts that get behind it. But really breaking down the basics, why does someone come off a ball screen? What are they reading and why? Getting out in transition, why do you make one pass ahead, to someone who's ahead of the basketball instead of dribbling it up to them? Teaching the terminology in that. So as much as the game, as you alluded to, is changing in a lot of ways, from spacing, from shots, from the lack of post play traditional back to the basket, court vision doesn't change much because we're adapting with the way the game is playing as well, and teaching the nuances of kind of the new and modern era of basketball and hoops.
And when we look at basketball, certainly, I always think that sports is a great way of connecting in terms of teaching lessons that also apply to the rest of your life. So going back to the mentorship part of it, how do you think the lessons you teach at Court Vision and to the game of basketball can positively impact your athletes moving forward through the rest of the aspects of their lives?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, stuff like saying please and thank you, things such as being on time, things such as, hey, coach, I apologize, I'm going to be late tonight, but just giving you a heads up that I'm going to be late. Proper email etiquette, proper text message etiquette, and then advice as to financial literacy, advice as to time management, to goal setting, to writing things down, to saying and doing what you are going to say, to the accountability and integrity that we should all possess are things that within court vision that we are constantly teaching and harping on with our athletes. As much as the aspect is sport related, the pull is actually sport, to bring kids into a more well-rounded and dynamic program to help them with their on and off court abilities.
And Bret, I don't have to tell you, once a coach, always a coach, right, buddy? So I'm curious to get your perspective on establishing a good coach to athlete relationship, to find what really makes an athlete tick and to maximize both their physical on the court performance and their mental performance as well.
Yeah, so you always want to be obviously there for someone. You want to make sure that athlete knows that your intentions are dear and they are honest and integral. So developing those relationships with athletes is much bigger than the game of basketball or sport. You obviously are there for sport, but it's really when you're messaging them, texting, emailing them, checking in on them, asking them how their grades are, asking them how their brother or sister is doing, asking them how their last test went, asking them how their family's doing, asking them how they are after a tough loss. How are you doing? Those are the big things and the big steps forward that help young athletes. It's not the ones who are always there for you when you have a big 50-point performance. It's the ones that are with you in the trenches, during the highs and during the lows, and are just relentlessly there every single day or week for you, and consistent throughout your, young years and even older years.
And talk to me about, obviously, everyone that plays basketball throughout the high school, college, and years doesn't always go to play professionally, but the lessons you learn from basketball can have an impact on your life. So talk about developing the whole athlete as well.
Yeah, so absolutely, right? There's 1% or less of you that are going to go on to the next level and get your education paid by a sport, but there's another 99% of you who are going to go on to the next level, whether that's academically at an institution, whether that's getting into the workforce, and the lessons you learn through sport and hoops of being on time, being a good person, being a good teammate, working hard. Those are all the lessons that you're going to take forward in your next steps, right? There's not many kids who stop playing basketball and then start a business at 18 where they're their own boss. You're likely going to have to go work for someone. You're going to have to get along with coworkers. You're going to have to abide by rules, which is very similar to basketball and being a high school athlete, being a club athlete, being a university athlete. All of those things pertain to the overall development of student athletes, and then what those next steps are after sport, specifically basketball in this case, is over with.
I asked Macdonald to be a forward thinker and lay out the blueprint on how he envisions the growth of CourtVision now and into the future?
Yeah, so we're currently in our 10th week of our 10-week programming where we have over 300 athletes in the program. It's been a really, really fun, awesome, kind of 2.5 months of, different focuses, different topics on the court, different topics off the court. And it would be really unique to, run these 3 to 4 times a year for different groups, different ages. And then, hopefully here in the, in the near future, we're currently becoming or going through the process of becoming a not-for-profit organization. And what we would love to do is to be able to actually go into schools, high schools, or go into, club teams or groups and actually watch film and break it down, bring in, the components of financial literacy, the components of goal setting, time management, life resources, but then also get on the court too. So the stuff that we watch on film, we want to be able to go then on the court and drill it. I'm a 5-year NCAA assistant coach at Simon Fraser University here in Vancouver, and we want to be able to actually take the approaches that universities take of watching film and then going and actually like working on the stuff right away that you watch film. There's not enough youth athletes and programs doing that. So we want to combine all that into some in-person stuff here once COVID goes away.
And you brought up the fact that you're an assistant coach at Simon Fraser. So I'm wondering how much of the impact of the athletes that you work with in that job drove you to start CourtVision, and how do you envision using your on the court experience to help grow the platform as well?
Yeah, so the way you interact and engage with um, university athletes and adults is a lot different than the way that you interact with 10, 11, 12-year-old kids. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old kids, they're a lot more impressionable. They're more moldable. They're kind of an unfinished product. They're still working on, becoming better humans, better athletes, better everything. Whereas when you get them in university and they're 22 years old, there's slight changes you can support and help them with, but a little bit of who they are at this point is who they are going to be in the future. So what I really like, and why CourtVision was started, was the fact that we get to work with young impressionable student athletes and really make strides and big differences with them versus the university game is, yes, there is off-court development, but there's kind of a lot more of the on-court development that you're working with them versus the younger group is more of the off-court development that you're working with. So you get a good mix of both.
I asked Macdonald to tap into his Canadian roots and reflect upon how proud he was that he had created a platform which allows him to celebrate his Canadian heritage and be an ambassador for the game while also nurturing the minds of young athletes.
Yeah, so obviously the game being from Dr. James Naismith, a Canadian, and, really the influx of talent in Canada that's growing, coming out of Ontario. BC does have some players, Alberta has some players, Saskatchewan, but the, large portion of athletes and good talent right now is in Ontario. And I think that's, obviously the Raptors winning it is really helping, basketball in Canada develop, year after year after year. And for me, it's just something that I personally loved. I enjoyed. I received great coaching throughout my youth, and it's something that I wanted to stay in and involved with as long as possible. To whatever I received as a young athlete growing up, I want to take that and now give it to the future athletes, because I feel like I was beyond lucky and grateful to receive what I received.
Absolutely. And I've got a few more for you. The first has to do with the popularity and growth of women's basketball. How do you think we better promote women's basketball and the growth of that game as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you definitely need to, from a marketing standpoint, you need to get the word out there. You need to get the game out there. You need to have, high, powerful males and females in the positions to, market the product, get it out there. A lot of the times the game is so similar, maybe minus some of the ways that, people can jump in terms of vertically. Other than that, from a fundamental standpoint, women's basketball is as good as men's basketball, and at times a lot better too. But it's really the lack of, promoting the game and marketing the game and getting it out there, which is where it's behind right now. And you need some key people in key positions to, take the bull by its horns, get it out there, get it in front of us, get it in front of other eyes, and not just have the men's game as the mainstream, option.
Absolutely, and we're right in the middle of a Madness. So I'm curious, as a basketball junkie yourself, I'm curious if you watched the tournament and what are your initial impressions of the first weekend, Bud?
Yeah. So, obviously I'm watching the tournament. I think probably like yourself, obviously, as we were touching on. It's quite neat to see it with the neutral court, because there's no home court or road advantage. There's no fans traveling. Obviously, it's close friends and family, and it's really, these guys once again putting it out on the line for the love of the game. Right? There's no money that they're making. There's no anything. There's barely any fans. There's 100 people in there, and just seeing them get after it, and that, which is just so awesome. And there's some really good teams. Obviously, there's been some huge upsets already, and it's really, really neat to just see that the high majors and mid majors are so similar these days, and it's not like the past where a high major would blow out a mid major 10 out of 10 times. The game is definitely evolving to a more even playing field.
And who we got in the Final Four, Bud?
That's a good question. I think, probably like everyone watching Gonzaga play, it's going to be tough to beat them. I think a lot of people had Illinois, and then, Loyola goes and beats them. That's a tough one. I don't really probably have a Final Four right now. I think I did a fun bracket. I might have had Iowa, and I believe it was Texas, and I think I had Illinois or Gonzaga, in one. But I think my bracket is busted like so many other people's as well. But I think if someone can knock off Gonzaga, you could be the team that ends up winning it, because that's a really, really well-oiled machine.
Yeah, I think Gonzaga is going to win the whole thing. But we've had a most unpredictable tournament. So that's how they draw you in, right, buddy?
Absolutely. That's March Madness. That's one shining moment, what we all live for. So absolutely.
Absolutely. And if people want to get involved in CourtVision or support it, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have our website, www.court.vision. It's not .com, it's not .ca. We just stop it at court.vision. And then, obviously out on our Instagram page, which is Find Your Court Vision. And then we have info@court.vision as an email too, if people want to get in touch and that.
Fantastic, Bret. Always a pleasure to talk some basketball. I had a real fun time chatting with you about CourtVision this afternoon. Want to thank you for being here and for taking the time. It's most appreciated.
Yeah, Kevin, you're welcome, and thank you for reaching out. I really appreciate it as well, and you're a really awesome person, and I really appreciate meeting you here. I know it's an e-meet, but thank you for your time and for reaching out. It means a lot, and everything.